Okay, welcome back. So we had there the top officials of the finance ministry saying the government has no business to be in business. Okay, joining us tonight on our continuing focus where we look and dissect this budget to see and we sift through the promise, the hype versus the reality. We are joined by Yogendra Yadav, National President, Swaraj India. Always great to have him on the show. We also have Ajay Veer Jhakar, Chairman Bharat Krishak Samaj, who's here with us, who's known as a gentleman farmer. So good to have him here as well. Naveen Agarwal, partner and CEO Tax, KPMG India, is with us on the show. And we also have Jayant Krishna, CEO as well as ED and CEO of NSDC. Former CEO of NSDC is on the show, and Vivek Reddy of the BJP continues to be with us. Yogendra, if I can just start by asking you about this budget, and I want to come in and I want to zoom in a little bit on, particularly on agriculture in a second. But first, I just want to ask you overall about something which I think you've been pointing out as well, and which the Congress has also flagged, that this is somewhat of a peculiar budget to dissect because it's silent on the numbers. There are no allotments that are mentioned as part of the budget speech, not even in terms of revenue or expenditure, not even basic numbers. And when you actually go to the budget documents to which you're referred to, it essentially seems to be a photocopy of the February interim budget. All the allotments seem to be pretty much the same. So it's a little hard to kind of, what do you make of, what sense do we make of it then?
Exactly, Vasu. That's what I've been saying since the morning. Where is the budget? I heard this speech. Now remember, budget is not poetry. Budget is not an English prose. Budget is hard numbers. Budget is about, this is what I'm going to earn. This is how I'm going to spend it. These are my priorities. This much I allocate for these. The finance minister's speech made no mention of any such thing. All right, you go into papers. She prefers prose. All right, you look at the numbers. So I went into the numbers. And this is a ditto copy. Now, I cannot be sure about every single item because I don't have the capacity to check every single item. But the ones I have checked, it's a ditto copy of the February budget.
Yes, you're right.
All right, you could say we had presented a full budget in the 6th year, in which case, why spend 2 years of national television and everything? She could get up and say, okay, my predecessor had presented a budget. I'm making these 2 or 3 very minor amendments and allow me on this occasion, I would like to speak for 15 minutes about what my philosophy for the rest of the regime would be. That would have been lovely. That would have given her a good start. I also thought she missed an opportunity. After all, it's a government with a massive mandate, no uncertainty or threat in the short term.
Yes.
She could use this occasion to say, these are the 3 things we failed to do last time. These are the few targets we missed.
Yes.
And we would now have this strategy to go forward. And one of them would have to do with farmers.
Right.
That great promise of doubling of farmers' income. As everyone knows, the government is nowhere close to doing anything on that.
Right.
She could have used this occasion to put the honest facts.
I want to come to farmers specifically in a second, but I just want to stay on this point about whether this is more or less a photocopy of the February budget, because as you said, and we've also done some of this research, it's all being done on the trot, that it largely looks like that's what it is. And here, Vivek, are the numbers. Okay, so if you look at agriculture, interim budget said 1.4 lakh crores, the full budget 1.4 lakh crores. Rural development, interim 1.2 lakh crores, full budget 1.2 lakh crores. Narega 60,000 crores interim, full budget 60,000 crores. Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana 25,853 crores, both absolutely the same. Swachh Bharat Yojana the same, defense spending the same, health same, education pretty much the same, Vivek Reddy. So why even have a budget? I mean, just say I table February's budget and everybody goes home.
Well, that's what Yogendra Yadav seems to suggest, but I think he misses a substantial point here.
Which is
the
what?
finance bill is not merely proposals. The finance bills are not merely proposals on money. The finance bills contain structural reforms, which are also part of the budget.
Okay.
And it also has other elements regarding mopping up of tax resources. For example, Vasu, in the interim budget, we never had the proposal to tax the rich, the super
Right.
rich, and that proposal is in.
Right.
You have other proposals where the corporate taxes are streamlined and there is consolidation of funds. I mean, there is consolidation of the financial gains, the consolidation of the tax resources.
Right.
So here you find there are massive changes, massive reforms that are inbuilt into this finance
Okay,
bill,
on the
unlike
massive-
interim budget.
on the-
Your
on the-
financial projections,
on the
one thing that
massive-
you can say is,
Yeah.
just a small correction,
Yeah.
one thing that you can say is
Yes.
that the financial projections of the interim budget may have been more or less precise, but that was a vote on account. This is a final budget for the entire year.
Okay, I
the
want to just-
financial projections may have been reiterated, they may have been skewed or changed.
Okay, I want to get
some
a quick
extent,
round of
but
views.
the issue is that
I want to get a quick round of views from everyone around the
That
table
there are
on
massive
this
changes,
aspect
yes.
of the budget, and then I'll come back to this business of rural
Vasu,
and
can I
farmers.
just say one small thing?
No, I'm going to come back to you, Vivek. Sorry, no monologues, because we have a lot of people who've been sitting very patiently. Starting with you, Ajay. I mean, this is somewhat surprising, right? That you're just repeating all the same numbers. I think you found that as well when you were looking at the budget papers.
What I find surprising with your numbers is that you quoted a figure of 1,30,000 crores for this year's budget compared to 67,000 crores for last year's budget. But if you discount
For agriculture.
and
I
if
think
you-
that was quoted by my colleague earlier.
Yeah, but
I
if
didn't
you-
quote
but
that,
if
but
you-
I think that's
yeah.
PM. That's because of PM Kisan.
but if you discount PM Kisan from that, then
Yeah.
actually you have lesser allocation for agriculture compared to last year.
Right.
So definitely there are many issues, and as a farmer, if you were asked what is there in the budget, you'd say zero budget.
Okay, I'm coming to farmers in a second. Mr. Krishna, this business of
Yeah, I think, I mean, to be
photocopy.
fair to the finance minister, one thing we must understand, because, you know, almost 1/3 of the year is over. So the elbow space available was limited. So therefore, a continuity has been thought of with some
Yes.
new ideas. I think while it may not have big, ticket reforms like, tweaking with the land acquisition, which has become an act of 2013, which has become a big stumbling block,
Yeah.
or while labor laws at the federal level have been touched upon,
Yes.
but at the state level, where a lot of grief
Yes,
lies,
yes.
I think those have not been touched. How to liberalize the import regime, I don't think except defense there's any announcement of any import duty cut on things like
Yes.
that. So I think a bank, PSU bank, they've stressed balance sheets. No, I mean, a radical idea would have been disinvestment there, but those are not there.
Yes.
But there's some spark I see in the sense, they've talked about the National Research Foundation, they've talked about for electric mobility vehicles, they've talked about incentives.
Okay, so you're saying that there are a couple of interesting ideas, but nothing big ticket. But again, Naveen, I mean, if you're not going to see big changes from February, then how is this idea that this is a kind of growth-driven budget?
So I think if I look at purely from a tax standpoint,
Yeah.
while I understand that there was an intent to mobilize more revenue through taxing the super rich, and there was a lot of discussion whether the inheritance tax will be introduced or not, while that did not find place, but you did see a super rich tax. And if you look at it internationally also, other countries are trying to tax the super rich. So the tax rate is going up steadily for people who are growing income beyond a certain limit.
Sure.
But what I would have expected to see actually was some sort of a roadmap on the introduction of the direct taxes code. Because while we understand that there is a draft report which is likely to be unveiled by the end of July, early August,
Sure.
One would have expected that there would be some directional statement, just like we saw in the context of GST. There
But
would
that
have been
you
some,
said that was not there.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just go across to Madan Sabnavis, Chief Economist, Care Ratings, joining us from Mumbai. Mr. Sabnavis, on this point about how this is virtually a photocopy of the interim budget, what do you make of that? Is that somewhat disappointing?
No, I think I'll agree with you that most of the numbers which are presented in his budget is a replica of what we had seen in the interim budget. But I think the point which has been skipped in the budget is that if you look at the revised numbers of 19, we actually had an update in terms of the accounted numbers which came from the controller of accounts, which actually said that the size of the budget had actually diminished by 1.5 lakh crores.
Right.
So instead of the 24.5 going to 27.8 or so right now, it's actually something like 23.1 to 27. That's something which the finance minister could probably have explained as to, because they're going to, these numbers actually say that the government is going to mobilize another additional 1.5 lakh crores compared to what was done last year. I think that was the point which was really missed out by in this particular budget.
Okay. Raghav, quickly.
Because that makes a big thing, because we're actually saying that tax revenue should not be growing at 11-12%.
Yes.
It should be growing at around 25%, which is not possible.
Right. Raghav,
You see,
yes.
every budget needs to be evaluated with respect to the current economic situation. There are 4 big challenges that India's economy is facing at this point in time, and the question that we need to ask ourselves is that has this budget actually tried to address those problems? One is, we are at a 45-year high when it comes to unemployment. Has this budget addressed that question? I don't think so. Second is, agriculture sector is bleeding, to put it mildly. Has this budget done anything to address that? No. Secondly, consumption has gone down drastically year on year. Nothing has been done to improve consumption. And lastly, to solve the above 3 problems, you need private investment.
Yeah.
No proposal has been made for private investment as far as I can read the budget. But one last thing which no one else has pointed out since morning, and which I want to point out, which is that a budget is a money bill. You don't need approval of the Rajya Sabha. You merely go and debate this in the Rajya Sabha, and therefore if you have strength in the Lok Sabha, under the garb of money bill, you can bring in a number of amendments.
Right.
This government has introduced serious amendments to 3 big financial, 3 big legislations. One is the Prohibition of Benami Property Transaction Act, second is Prevention of Money Laundering Act, and the third is the Black Money Act. Now, in order to escape scrutiny in the Rajya Sabha, they have brought serious amendments under the garb of a money bill in these 3 acts. Something similar was done in the previous budget as well.
That is we are now straying into a separate political battle, and we'll try to see if we have time to come to that. But to pick up on the point that you were making about farmers, and I want to come back to you, Yogendra and Ajay, on that, because I think it is time to look a little more closely at the budget's, in a sense, silence on agriculture, Yogendra. So there is a reference to something called zero budget farming, but apart from that, there doesn't seem to be much else.
Vasu, as I've been saying, I don't mind the government replicating the February budget. It's just that I want transparency on these things. The reason why I would have liked some changes from February, from now, is the following. Number one, there is a looming threat of a drought. I would have expected the finance minister to address it by way of providing greater funds in the National Disaster Relief Fund, and also increasing the limit of crop loss compensation, which is eligible to be paid, which the government promised to change some 6 years ago, hasn't been changed now. Number two, the economic survey acknowledges that 71% of the crop of this country is sold below the MSP price. I would have expected the finance minister to shift the PM Asha scheme somewhat, provide greater funds to FCI for better procurement. Number three, there is the doubling of farmers' income committee, the report. Now, the one thing that has escaped everyone's attention is that the government has removed the upper ceiling, so everyone is eligible. In February, they had provided 75,000 crore rupees.
Yes.
More farmers are eligible.
Yes.
The Prime Minister himself came out of the parliament and said it will cost us 87,000 crore rupees.
Yes.
But the budget continues to say 75,000 rupees.
You're right.
75,000 crore rupees.
You're
What
right.
kind of a joke is this?
Yes, this is you're right. We
none
spotted
of the
this, but
things that
we didn't mention
needed
it.
to
I'm
be
glad you
touched
brought
have
it up.
been touched.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And the final thing about doubling of farmers' income committee, there's a lovely committee report of doubling farmers' income. I would have expected the government to take that into account, offer a mid-term review. 3 years have passed of a 6-year project. Say we've achieved this much so far, and say how are we going to achieve doubling in the next 3 years, if at all that's possible, or revise the goal. Say we'll achieve it in 8 years, 9 years, but at least be transparent. Nothing of that kind has happened.
Okay.
That's why I'm very disappointed.
Okay. You know, Yogendra made this point, and we wanted to mention it, but we omitted to, that there is that gap between PM Kisan having, since they announced it initially, 75,000 crores, and since it went universal, it goes to 87. The budget still says 75,000. So there is that one of many anomalies. But I wanted to ask you quickly about zero budget. Yes, sorry.
No, even on this PM Kisan,
Yes.
the government is basing their data on agriculture census. And what I understand is happening in the villages is that the requirement for PM Kisan could go into 1,50,000 crores, because the estimation for PM Kisan, whether it be 75,000 crores or 86,000 crores, is based on wrong data. And the quality of data is so bad, and now people are being made to fill out these forms. It could actually require 1,50,000 crores, and I think nobody's telling the finance minister this. They're damn scared to tell them that.
That's a whole separate challenge.
Yes.
But quickly, because you've been sort of playing with this idea, joking about the idea of zero budget farming. Firstly,
I was joking about zero budget, not zero budget farming.
not zero budget
Yeah,
farming.
zero budget.
Okay, but what is zero budget? So zero budget farming is basically when you try to do farming through very low, almost virtually zero cost to the farmer, right? Through low inputs. Is that something which is a viable idea to
I don't
present
think
in
so.
the budget in that
I don't
manner?
think so. It's a viable idea to double farmers' income, and I don't think so. It still needs to be proven on the ground that it is working. But to base the whole doubling farmers' income idea on zero budget, I think so doesn't make sense. I think so somebody's been feeding wrong information to the finance minister while preparing the budget. So I think there's a big disconnect between what's happening on the ground and what's
Right.
being reported to the finance ministry.
Also, gentlemen, it's not just this. There's silence on health. There's virtually nothing on education. Again, these are all just standard. This is just SOP for budgets.
So
What do you?
just one more thing.
Yeah.
Even when you heard the budget today, there was talk about media animation. There's
Yes.
talk about electric cars. There's no mention about drought. There's no mention about water crisis. There's nothing on drip irrigation. There's so many other bigger ideas that could have been mentioned rather than talk about media animation.
Okay. Health, education. I mean, these are all very important areas of the economy. What did you make of?
Yeah, especially health, this Ayushman Bharat, in concept, it's a wonderful scheme.
Sure.
Like, in a country as complex as ours, having a multiplicity of layers when it comes to delivery,
Yes.
they're huge challenges.
Yes.
But none of them are, addressed in the budget, Because this is something, if it is done well, it could potentially change the health of healthcare in the country. But I mean, I didn't hear anything on that front in the budget at all.
So I think education, there was a reference to the fact that our universities are now recognized, and there are 3 universities that are recognized, but the fact is that the allocation was increased, but beyond that we really didn't see much on education in the budget.
Vivek, you want to respond to this? I mean, such crucial areas of the economy, agriculture, health, education, virtually nothing in the budget?
I think it is wrong to say that education was underrepresented in the
Okay,
budget.
but start with
There was
agriculture.
a
If I can
new
just start with
education policy
agriculture.
that was to be unveiled.
If
Yes.
I can just start with agriculture, because
Yes.
Karnataka, from
And-
where you are speaking to us, is one of the many states in India which is under severe drought. We already know that quite apart from that,
Yes.
rural distress is a problem. Why this virtual silence on agriculture and on farmers?
Vasu, I think, I don't know why Yogendra Yadav is trying to bring in drought issue here, because this is always tackled, this challenge is always tackled on a case-to-case basis by the National Disaster Relief Fund, and provisions are made, and there are substantial provisions made under this, and those reserves are always there. And this is on a case-to-case basis, which is assessed on the basis of actual drought at the end of the monsoon. So these things did not figure at this stage in the finance bill. I don't know why Yogendra Yadav is trying to divert the subject into these areas. But agriculture as such,
But it's not
Kisan
just
Samman
drought.
Yojana,
No,
which
no,
was
but
brought,
Vivek, it's
which
not
was
just
brought
drought.
in the interim budget.
I'm talking about
Let me just
farmers.
complete.
We're
Let me
talking
just-
about farmers and agriculture as a whole. Where do they find a place in this budget?
Yes.
Or
There are
have we missed something?
I have a theory. on
10,000,
Yes.
yes, 10,000 zero budget farming is one. If you look at how
10,000
there has
zero
been a
budget
shift
farming?
from
What does
the
that mean?
existing, no.
You-
10,000 new farmer producer organizations to be formed to ensure there are economic clusters for the farmers. One. Number 2, Vasu, is the zero budget farming, which
Yes.
they have proposed. ENAM is sought to be strengthened. private entrepreneurs to be supported in driving value addition to farmer produce from the field. Look at all these measures. And
Okay.
then Kisan Sanman Yojana,
Ajay.
which was brought up in the interim budget,
Yeah.
is continued. And
Yeah.
that is a big ticket reform. And this is a
Which,
social
by the way, as
benefit
we just pointed
that is
out,
given
the
to farmers
allotment,
for
the allotment
sowing.
doesn't match. The allotment in the budget doesn't match what the government itself says that it will have to spend. There's a gap of at least 8,000
Well,
crores.
that's-
Anyway, quickly, Ajay.
These
Yes.
are-
Just a second, Vivek. Yes.
These are
I
concerns
really-
being raised. There
they-
will always be an additional bill. Yes.
Okay.
There is nothing on job creation. See, to make farming successful, you have to create jobs. So I don't know, there's so many panelists here, economists here. Somebody should be explaining how are jobs going to be created out of this budget.
We did
That's-
that.
that's
We just debated that in the previous hour.
Okay.
But that's an ongoing debate. Okay, we've all largely been somewhat skeptical about this budget. I have to wrap up here. But before I do that, I want to go around to see if I can get everyone to tell me at least if they think there was one positive thing that they saw in this budget, starting with you, Raghav. This is a challenge. Think of
No,
one. Come on.
I think
of one positive thing.
the angel tax bit that has been included in the budget
Right.
is
Giving
certainly
relief to
the startup,
the startups on
industry.
angel
Yeah,
tax.
that
That's a good
is
thing.
a good thing to begin with. Yeah.
I think there were certain issues with respect to the IBC. I think the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, which
Yes.
which are trying to be, where the government is trying to address a number of disputes. So some of those issues were also ironed out. Yeah,
You felt as part of the
yeah,
budget.
yeah.
Sir.
I think rationalizing, the federal labor laws, 44 of them into 4 codes, I think that's one bright idea. And second, I would say commercialization of space. We have made a huge advent as a country. How do we monetize that? So have a commercial entity to look after that. These two are good ideas.
These are good ideas. Mr. Sabnavis, the one big positive idea that you take away from this budget?
No, I think the positive thing which came out was the bank recapitalization of 70,000 crores, because they did not find any mention in the interim budget. But it's also interesting that they're going to do it through the issuance of recapitalization bonds. So
Right.
therefore, it's budget neutral in terms of actual allocations. I think that's the big thing which came.
Okay. Vivek, since you've been defending the budget, I'm going to ask you the reverse question. Is there one area of weakness in this budget? You think? One loophole or one gap which you think could have been plugged?
I think, Vasu, this is an all-round budget. It has addressed challenges in all sectors.
No, I asked you for a
And
weak
the
link.
fact is, it has taken the challenges head on.
Okay.
No, there is no weak link. It has addressed all the
It's
challenges
all
head
positive. Okay.
on. And despite
10 on-
global headwinds,
So 10 on
I
10.
think these are bold decisions.
There's a
Huh? Vivek, 11 on 10?
Absolutely. Absolutely 10
11
on
on
10.
10 on 10, absolutely.
There is
10
one
on 10.
big
We will
takeaway.
make the 5 trillion economy happen.
Okay, all right.
That's
Vivek,
why
yes.
it is a 10 on 10 budget.
All right.
There is one positive in this budget is that there are no big announcements. You know, farmers have really got scared of these big announcements. So I'm very
Oh, I
happy it's a
see.
normal, sober budget.
No news is good news.
No
that what
news
you're
is good
saying?
news. Yeah.
Okay.